What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Innovative Seller. This is going to be your go-to show to learn what's new, what's interesting in the world of sales and technology. Every single week, we're going to be bringing you interviews with some of the most forward-thinking thought leaders in the space. You get a chance to ask me questions in our Q&A section, and I'll break down the top trends in sales processes and technology every single show. So sit back and let's get into it. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Innovative Seller Show, episode number 3. If you have not already checked out the first 2, I don't know what you're doing, but make sure to subscribe to the channel and get the notifications. Every 2 weeks, we drop a new episode where I catch you up to speed on the latest process trends in sales, technology trends. We have interviews and Q&A to keep you up to speed on the latest and greatest in sales. This week, my friends, we're going to talk about how to deal with different types of buyers. Each buyer comes to you in different parts of the journey, and we're going to break down how you can meet them exactly where they are. We're going to do an interview with yours truly on the NTENT methodology and framework. NTENT replaces a lot of the things that people have been using for methodologies 20 or 30 years ago, and I'll break it down step by step for you. Technology trends. I'm going to teach you how to get the most out of your tech stack. How many of you out there are investing a lot of time, money, and energy into your tech stack, and you're like, Jake, I know we're not getting enough out of it. I'm going to give you a 3-step process to do that. And as always, we'll wrap up with some Q&A from you, the audience. So make sure to drop your questions in the comments for future episodes, and I'll make sure to curate those and answer them in the future. All right, everybody, let's get ready and jump into process trends. All right, this week's trends in sales process. Everyone, before we get into it, I want to make sure if you haven't already bought a copy of The Innovative Seller, now is the time. The book drops April 9th, but you will get access to our community and the Innovative Seller Summit that is happening in just a few weeks, March 26th. So make sure to drop a copy of the book, get yourself one. I'll put a link in the comments, so make sure to subscribe to the channel and you'll get future notifications on everything Innovative Seller. So, process trend. My friends, I cannot tell you how frustrating it can be to buy things today. How many of you have had to buy something for your business recently and you felt like you just kept getting put through hoops, hoop after hoop? You got to talk to this person can't even demo the product or talk about it. And so I want to introduce this concept that we talk about in the book called VECS, V-E-C-S. Okay, V stands for vetted. And what I want everyone to think about is, do you have a sales process that if someone comes in and they're already using your competition, they've already talked to a Slack group about you, do you have a process to fast track that person to step 3, right? Or somebody's educated, they've done a little bit of that, you can get them to step 2. Or if they're cold, you start them with some education material, right? Too often we have this kind of one-size-fits-all buying process. You know, I saw this crazy stat, something like 44% of millennials would prefer a salesperson-less experience. That means they don't even want a salesperson. McKinsey has some crazy stats about people wanting to self-service, and that's what the S in VEC stand for. Self-service purchases at like $40,000, $50,000. So this week's process trend, what I want you to do is think about, how do you deal with people who want a different experience? Are you treating everybody the same? No matter what, I got to stop here, get qualified, and create this weird frustration that we've all experienced? Or do you have a process to treat vetted people a little bit differently and get them later in the process? Educated people, maybe they need to start at step 2, and maybe even a process self-service. So today, I want you to think about your customer experience. The concept of VECS, again, you'll learn more about it in the book when you pre-order today, right? And we're talking about it in the community. So whenever you get a copy of the book, you get free access to the community for a year. So come over, continue the conversation about how we can provide better sales experiences for people that are further along in the process, as opposed to treating everyone one size fits all. Next up, we're going to get into the NTENT framework. I'm going to break down for you a new way for you to think about how you interact with customers. That's not this like MEDDIC or BANT, this very 1996 process. I'm going to give you a new framework that fits the way that buyers want to buy today. So make sure this is the part that you're going to want to come back to. So earmark right here and let's get into it.
Jake, can you tell us a little bit about the history of sales methodologies and why they are important?
Yeah, I think, look, a good framework and something easy to remember is fantastic for teams. If you're looking to grow and scale a team, having something that's easy to remember, a process for people to follow is a complete win-win. So I'm all for processes. I've learned the benefit of them myself. And so the history, sales methodologies are something that were invented to make it really easy for people to learn new sales processes, right? To where we could really quickly hone in on a specific word or action, and everybody knew the exact same definition of that. So I'm a big fan of sales methodologies. I just think it's time to evolve.
And how did certain methods get more popular than others?
Well, I think, look, we look for simplification. I think we look for things that say, oh, well, if we can qualify people better, or, this method makes things like really, really simple. And candidly, a lot of these methodologies today that are being used fit a world when we only had one decision maker, or when we only had one buyer or one champion. But today there are hundreds of competitions for every single product. There are, I think Gartner said there's like 8 people involved in the process. And so methodologies just have to evolve as well too. And we've got to try to move from, this mindset of these methodologies that were developed, 10, 20, 30 years ago to something that actually fits how people buy today and how sales teams need to sell.
Jake, can you talk about MEDDIC specifically and what it means and why it's been so successful?
Yeah, MEDDIC has been a framework, especially we work with a lot of technology companies. And MEDDIC is something that kind of caught on with a lot of venture capital firms and other private equity firms in about the last 20 years or so. And it does a really good job of making it simple. This idea of, what's the compelling event? Who's the economic buyer? Who's the decision maker? And the different acronyms that we'll spell out for you. It just does a really good, simple job that, hey, if you can identify a lot of these criteria, then you should have a deal. And at face value, that's fantastic. The reality is there's 2 issues. Is many teams today use this as like a qualification framework. And what I mean by that is if they don't get it all in the first call, like all these things, and you might have had your first call with somebody who's low level, so they can't even answer half of these questions. So one is we started to turn it into a qualification framework, which isn't what it was meant to do. And 2, again, it was developed in 1996. And I think I just learned to drive in 1996. If that tells you what was going on in 1996, I was probably listening to Keith Sweat or something. Today's buyers are way different. There's not this one decision maker on high who, will go spend $100,000 and not listen to people. There's not one single champion that you have who's going to shepherd you. It's way more complex. People have access to way more information than they ever did before. And that's why MEDDIC, although on paper, I think is a really good process, just does not age with the way that people want to buy today.
And if it's worked so well, why isn't it working now?
I think it goes back to some of the things that I mentioned, which is in particular, a lot of the pieces of the acronym deal with individuals. It's about, hey, I got to identify this person in the deal and this person. The reality is it's not this person. It's these teams, right? And I know I talked about it earlier, but we have to start to think about the teams of people that are moving forward. And that's one. And then the other piece is even the concept of compelling event. Well, the business might have one need, but the user group might have a completely different need. And so if we're not doing a really good job of understanding the complexities, it doesn't handle a more complex world that most sellers are selling in today.
So Jake, what is the answer in the shifting world?
Well, look, it's interesting. I didn't really think about adding a framework or methodology to the book until literally the last edits. I was rereading the book through and I started to think about all these teams that we work with that are using these frameworks and methodologies. And as I looked at the book and it provides such a beautiful blueprint about how to create a customized sales journey, I realized that maybe the answer was a new, more modern, inclusive way to describe ways that a seller can actually look at a deal objectively and also make it very tactical for them to execute. And so it's not, this like overarching, like really philosophical framework, but instead, NTENT, and I know we'll get into it, is really meant to be a very simple framework that if a salesperson or organization follows it, unlike these other processes and methodologies that were built for this very simple one person, two people, it really tries to encompass how deals are done today. And as I read the book for the third, fourth time, I realized, you know what? That's the missing piece. And that's why I developed NTENT.
Amazing. I love that. Let's go ahead and break down NTENT for the people that are hearing about this for the first time.
Yeah. So NTENT, again, is really designed to be a way that if me as a seller, I can look and say, hey, if I can execute these parts of the process, I'm going to have a much higher likelihood of meeting the customer where they're at, and hopefully us having a live opportunity as a part of it. So the first part of NTENT, the first N in NTENT stands for next steps. And the reason next steps are so important is in today's world, there's so much competition for time and attention, and the status quo is becoming what people default to. And so if you want to have a deal that is going to close, and it's for the buyer too, and that's why I tried to create NTENT from both people's perspective. It could be something that you would share with your buyer, right? You wouldn't go share with the buyer like, are you the champion? Are you the decision maker, the economic? No, right? Next steps is to say, look, if we're going to progress, then after every conversation, we need to drive the next steps. That in today's day and age, if you don't create momentum, people will default back to the status quo. And so that's where the next steps became such a huge part of this. As I thought about from working with so many companies, why are deals stalling? Why don't people close? And it's like, man, just set up the next steps. And if you just do that consistently, it's better for the customer. So then they really feel like you're being a guide for them. And it's also better for you because you're driving momentum in the deal as well.
Okay, so that was a great explanation on the letter N. Let's go into the letter T in NTENT. Can you tell us a little bit about what that means?
Yeah, teams is what it means. And again, it goes back to this concept of in today's modern buying, there are these two teams, right? There's the team that's focused on the usage. Hey, do we love this product? Is it going to drive better effectiveness or efficiency or make us more money on the day-to-day level? The team finds it easy to use. They like working. So there's all these people that are involved in a team of people on the end user level. Any one of them could be a champion or detractor or say, I don't like it, it doesn't work. And even if you've got a champion, it doesn't matter. And so we need to identify the end user team, who are the people that are involved in making that decision of, yes, this will solve our end user issues. Then you need to identify another team. And that team cares about the impact on the business, and it cares about return on investment. And a lot of the people, and you usually have some crossover on those two teams. There could be one or two people that kind of straddle those two teams. But the person who's logging in and using admin features, they don't make more money if this thing returns, a 20x increase to our sales, right? They don't care about that. They care about the usage, and vice versa. That team that cares about the impact, they don't care about the admin features. And so we have to think, instead of us moving a company through the process, a sales process, we have to move the two teams through the sales process. And so when we're talking to reps and we're having conversations, great, where are we at with the user team? How are they progressing? And this can be even for smaller deals. There could be one or two people on one team and two or three people on the other team. But you got to think they care about very different things. There's not one compelling event. Each one has their own event. And so that's why, again, I really thought about this framework. I'm like, it's not about people. It's about these teams have to move forward. And one team could be further in the process. The other one's here, and we've got to catch them up. And so that's why teams is an absolutely critical concept for anyone wanting to understand modern B2B sales.
Well said. Well said. Tell me a little bit about the letter E in NTENT. What does the E stand for?
So E stands for education level. And again, why I added this into the book is I really started to think about tactical things that happen in every deal is, look, back 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, definitely 1996, the only way for someone to be educated about your product was to talk to a salesperson. They couldn't search online. They couldn't look at a Slack group. They couldn't hit up a WhatsApp group on RevOps Pros or whatever it is. Today, people are coming to companies with different levels of education. I know I've talked before about VEX, right? Vetted buyers. These are people that are already using the competition. They've talked about you in a Slack group. They already know pricing. We got to get those people to step 3. So one of the most important parts of your journey, where are my people from an education process? Should I be meeting them at step 3? Or, hey, are they cold, right? The C in VEX. So I need to meet them early on and educate them, right? And then the S is one of the more controversial, is the self-service. And there's a lot of data that shows people are willing to self-service at a higher and higher and higher level. And so education is really just about, how do I determine what the best fit is for the customer based on how educated they are and where they're at in the process. And that's why, again, you can't have this kind of linear process. Again, teams are moving at different spaces. People are coming in at different levels. Our world's just more complex. And so understanding the education level and where people are coming in is just critical today.
That was an excellent explanation. I'm definitely starting to see how this workflow is panning out. Looks like we're getting to the end of NTENT. Tell us what the letter N means towards the end of NTENT.
So again, thinking through what can actually help a seller or a buyer, right? Everything in NTENT, you could copy and paste this and show your buyers. Say, hey, look, this is what makes a good customer. You would never do that with BANT. BANT's another one. Budget, authority, need, time. You wouldn't do that. You wouldn't do it with MEDDIC, right? Numerical priority. The second N stands for numerical priority. And why this is so simple and easy is the classic N is needs. Do they have a need? Well, let me ask you this. If I go ask 5 reps or 10 reps in your sales organization to listen to the same exact call, this person's going to say, oh, they have a need. This other person's like, no, it wasn't good enough, right? Numerical priority makes this precise. What numerical priority is this for your organization to solve? And that's for everybody. Maybe their user team, this is priority 1, and this team is priority 4. Well, that's a problem. So numerical priority replaces the concept of need, because needs can be objective based on what I heard. And I heard this was a need, whereas another A+ seller is like, they're just kind of interested. And so numerical priority is a really easy way to just add, hey, where does this fit on a numerical priority level in terms of things you have to get done this quarter? It's a great, clean question, and it also eliminates the objectivity of a salesperson, mishearing or overplaying a potential need.
Great response. I'm definitely understanding intent, where you're going with this. Now, the last letter in intent, letter T, could you tell us what that is about?
Time to impact. And it's so easy. Again, I want you to think about everything being customer facing. Salespeople care about signed contract. Customers care about impact on their business. And that could be impact for the end user team. They're proficient in it. They're using. Could be impact for the business to see the return on investment. And so if in your proposal process, in the way that you're talking about your product, you're not also talking about when do you need to see impact by, not signed contract, because buyers don't care about the signed contract. You care about the signed contract because you get the commission. Buyers care about when am I going to see impact from this. So imagine the conversation I'm having, it completely changes. Hey, we need to get this signed by, the 31st or whatever other, techniques people use. And it changes the paradigm to say, hey, look, knowing your fiscal year is ABC, it's going to take us X amount to get onboarded. When do you need to see the impact of this by? Because that aligns me as a seller to you and what you're going to find the benefit. And so again, time to impact is just another great way for sellers and buyers to interact, because the more I can understand your time to impact, I can tell you, I can say, look, okay, if this is when you need to see impact by, then this is what you need to do. This is the timeline that we have to do, because I want to make sure you can get implemented properly and you can use it. So that's really intent, man. That's why we've developed this, is again, next steps, which again, you have to drive momentum today. I just cannot stress how important it is in deals. You got to drive next steps. Teams is one of the most no-brainer, that we have these different teams today that just didn't exist. Education level, like I said, 20 years ago, everyone is the same level of education. They didn't know anything and they had to talk to a seller. That's just not the world we live in. Numerical priority, man, does that clean up this whole needs thing and just makes it very black and white. And again, numerical priority by team. The end user team, this is priority 1. But guess what? If the buyer and impact team, this is numerical priority 5, deals might not happen. And that's good. Then you're getting the customer talking. They're saying, well, hey, why is this a 1 to you and a 5 to you? This is going to impact our business. So again, all this is very customer facing. And then obviously time to impact. Time to impact, I cannot tell you, when you align with your customer on the time they need the impact by, it gets rid of all these cheesy sales techniques and really just shows them like, hey, this person's really invested. So to me, that's why intent is the answer. Intent is the answer to this new world that we live in, to meet buyers where they are in their journey and create a sales framework that really easily allows me as a seller to know, am I doing a good job of that? And then hopefully, if I am doing a good job of that, we'll have a deal at the end.
That was great.
All right, my friends, we've come to one of my favorite parts of the show, which is technology trends. And in today's episode, I'm going to talk about how to actually just get the most out of the technology that you've actually probably already used or that you buy. I cannot tell you how many companies, and we work with hundreds and hundreds of companies every single year. And I'm serious, my best guess is maybe people are using 20% of what these products can do, 30%. And I'm gonna give you 3 reasons why and how to fix it, okay? Number 1 is you need to make sure you have a consistent refresh cycle where you learn the latest and greatest. What do I mean by that? The way that you bought a technology and what that technology does literally 6 months or a year ago, it might have completely changed. And so every 6 months, I want you to set up a new demo. And hey, if you're a rep too, and hopefully a lot of you are in sales, my friends, you go get a demo of the technology yourself. Don't wait around for your sales operations groups to just do this for you. You can go and do this yourself. Every 6 months, you need to get a refresh on the latest and greatest to make sure that you're using it. These tools are getting so much better, so much more effective. So do your refresh cycle. Number 2, get your people certified or hire experts. Yes, I run a sales consulting company and we do hundreds of sales technologies. So yes, you can hire us or your team. If you are using a tool every day, if you're a seller, right? Or if you're a leader and your team is using, you need to get certified or become an expert in that tool. You don't need to know how to do the admin features and all that behind the scenes stuff necessarily. But I'm telling you, if you want to know why you're only getting 20% out of the tech stack, it's because you're not an expert in the tool. And I don't know about you, but for me, if I'm going to use the same technology every single day over and over, I'm going to become an expert in it because it's going to help me to get better faster. Get certified or hire an expert. I don't care which one you do. And last, but certainly not least, is make sure you take the time to set up or redeploy it customized to your specific needs. What do I mean by that? Most of these companies are going to put you through a one-size-fits-all onboarding plan. You have unique needs, right? And so I cannot tell you how many times I've seen it. We've got to go back and re-onboard. So customize the deployment, customize the use case, take the extra time to make it fit for you, okay? Do your refreshes every 6 months. Just go get a new demo, pretty simple. Make sure that you become an expert or hire experts on the tools, and make sure if you need to go back and redeploy it and do customizations, do it. I promise it will be helpful and that your team is going to get a lot more out of the tech stack instead of that 20 or 30% that we're seeing. I want you to get 80 to 100% of that. So that's what I've got for you this week on tech trends. Next up, one of my favorite sections is the Q&A. So let's get into it.
How can I better understand my customers' business challenges and goals?
Yeah, this is an interesting one because the answer is you have to know what they care about. Meaning if you don't know what that person does, how that company makes money, you're never going to be able to help them with their goals. So go use ChatGPT. If you don't know what a VP of operations and finance does, use ChatGPT. It'll tell you 3 or 4 things that are trends in the industry. You have to care about what they do, how their company makes money. And the other big thing is you got to ask smart questions. Have the questions written out to where you say, hey, I know this is a top trend. Tell me more about how you're dealing with that. You can't ask these dumb questions like, tell me about your goals. That's too big. So if you know who you're talking to, you know what they care about, you can then ask smarter questions. So do those 2 things and you'll get much better answers and you'll really understand what's driving them to make a decision.
Jake, what strategies can I use to effectively qualify leads and prioritize my sales efforts?
I think the mindset around qualification is just not the right mindset versus I like the word consultation. If you go in with a mindset of I got to qualify this person, you're gonna be short-sighted. You're not gonna hear little nuances or things that you could pull on. So my advice to anyone who's like, Jake, how can I better qualify? Is stop qualifying and start consulting. Go deep, really try to understand what their motivations are, what they're going through. And that mindset alone will lead you to more deals that are going to be likely to close, as opposed to someone who's going in and you're asking very tactical questions that don't open up the conversation. Open up the conversation, stop qualifying, start consulting.
Jake, what are the best practices for conducting effective sales discovery calls?
So the discovery is the most important part of the sales process. Everyone wants to be better at closing and doing these other things, but at the end of the day, if I don't ask the right questions, it makes closing more difficult. And so a couple of things to think about is don't get too tactical too soon. Don't ask like the utility that your thing solves, because then you're going to make a conversation too tactical. Start with, again, understanding their business. Hey, what are the top 2 priorities numerically for the business this quarter? So when you start high, and if you can tag what you do to a bigger picture priority, there's a much higher likelihood that other person cares and that the deal is going to get done too.
How can I improve my negotiation skills to close more deals?
Negotiation. I think like when people think about sales, negotiation is like always top of mind. To me, I try to reverse engineer to where I don't have to negotiate. There's a lot of really great books about negotiation. What I try to do is think through, what is this person going to ask? What are the things they're going to do? And then I want to try to address every single one of those. So when we get to the end, there's not this like weird back and forth, a bunch of objections, things like that. And then the other thing is I make sure that I've got business reasons or gives and takes. So I'll say, look, hey, look, I know if I can, I'm growing my business, if I can get a case study from this, okay, what levers can I pull to where maybe I don't have to discount and I can give them a little free product as something that's new that we might be doing. So that could be something new they buy from us. Or I think, hey, what are some things that I need would help me with my business that have a lot of value that don't actually cost me a lot? So one, I try to reverse engineer that